Li Xuan and company noticed the egg-sized crystal that Zhou Wen pulled out. The crystal looked dreamy with a glow flickering within it. The glow had the appearance of the demonized general, making it a primordial energy skill crystal. The blade demonized general's primordial energy skill. I wonder which one is it. He's really struck it rich if it's astral/blade, Li Xuan said as he approached to take a look at the crystal. As the blade demonized general had several primordial energy skills, with astral/blade being one of them, the chances of it dropping were extremely low even if a primordial energy skill crystal were to drop. By the side, Jing suddenly said, the demonized general figure inside the crystal has a faint red glow on the word engraved on top of its head. This primordial energy skill crystal is astral/blade. It's really astral/blade. Old Zhou, your luck is really unparalleled. Li Xuan said in excitement, if you wish to sell this astral/blade skill, just sell it to me. I'll quickly advance to the legendary stage, so I'll be able to use it. Zhou Wen shook his head slightly and placed the primordial energy skill crystal in his pocket. The average person couldn't withstand the surge of primordial energy skills at the mortal stage. Any forceful absorption would damage the body and in serious cases might even lead to death. However, Zhou Wen was different. If he could take the primordial energy skill into the game and let the blood-colored avatar attempt to absorb it, he himself wouldn't be in any danger. Zhou Wen had already tried absorbing legendary primordial energy skills in-game and all of them had happened without a hitch. Zhou Wen's news of killing the word engraved demonized general quickly spread across campus. To kill one in 79 seconds was unheard of even amongst special admission students. However, the topic of conversation was the silver-winged flying ant. Many people believed that it was due to it that Zhou Wen was able to slay the word engraved demonized general. Such speed and ability of flight made it a top speed type, flight-capable companion beast among those at the legendary stage. After Wang Fei saw the recording of Zhou Wen slaying the word engraved demonized general, she gave Zhou Wen a very high evaluation, believing him to be a talent worth nurturing. Even Jing, who always found him a sore sight, viewed him in a different light. She believed that Zhou Wen would once again get back on his feet, turning back into the genius he once was. However, Wang Fei and Jing quickly realized they were wrong. After killing the word engraved demonized general, Zone didn't come out of his dorm at all. He didn't enter the dimensional zones to train himself, nor did he attend any classes. Jing often saw Zhou Wen lying in the yard, holding his phone gaming while sunbathing. He gamed for several hours at a time without even changing his pose. After he obtained the astral/blade primordial energy skill, many students tried to buy it from him through different means, but they were all rejected by him. Although Zhou Wen already had the ability to kill blade demonized generals and could always slowly grind one in-game, that would take him too much time. He didn't wish to waste any time for just some pittance of money. On the day he returned home with the astral/blade crystal, he had tried using the mysterious phone to snap a picture of it. It instantly pulled it in-game and allowed him to successfully master the astral/blade primordial energy skill. What left Zhou Wen perplexed was that astral/blade was somewhat different from the typical primordial energy skill. This was because it didn't have a rank and the amount of primordial energy it expended wasn't fixed. Either 1 or 10 points of primordial energy was enough to release astral/blade, but the unleashed force was different. The more primordial energy used, the stronger the astral/blade's beam was. Zhou Wen had tested the might of the astral/blade in-game. When using 10 points of primordial energy, it could instantly cull the legendary silver-winged flying ant in midair. It was fast and ruthless, giving him the exhilaration of killing someone through empty space. It was something Ashen Palm and Vigor Divine Fist couldn't compete with. Over the past few days, Zhou Wen had been grinding Tiger Cage Pass in bid to encounter paper demonized generals. He wanted to see if astral/blade could crack the primordial energy skill of the paper demonized general. Unfortunately, his luck was terrible. After repeatedly grinding Tiger Cage Pass, he only encountered one word engraved demonized general. It wasn't a blade demonized general, but a fist demonized general. When astral/blade and Zhou Wen's other primordial energy skills hit the fist demonized general, its body would flash a golden light as though it was layered in gold. Even the astral/blade's beam couldn't leave a scratch. Finally, the blood-colored avatar was slain by the fist demonized general with one charge, leaving him rather disheartened. However, he was used to such outcomes. Compared to others being capable of encountering one word engraved demonized general in a time span of 2 to 3 months, his efficiency was considered a lot higher. Just as he was preparing to continue grinding Tiger Cage Pass, he heard his phone ring. He still picked it up despite it being an unknown number. Is this Zhou Wen? You have a delivery. A man's voice sounded from the phone. I don't think I bought anything on the internet recently. Who would deliver something to me? Zhou Wen thought for a while to no avail. However, he went to the door to take receipt of the parcel. The parcel wasn't very big. Zhou Wen looked at it carefully and saw that the sender had the word principal written on it. The former principal mailed me something. Zhou Wen found that the most probably. Previously, Ouyang Lan had mentioned to him that the former principal had been invited to a mysterious dimensional zone and hadn't returned to date. That was because the magnetic fields there were abnormal, preventing any communication devices to be used. Even Ouyang Lan didn't know his present situation. After returning to his dorm, Zhou Wen opened the parcel and couldn't help but be shocked when he saw the thing inside. The parcel wasn't big to begin with. Stuffed inside it were several old newspapers, but the only thing of note was a name card. It was a real name card. The owner of the name card was the owner of a dimensional crystal shop. His name was Qin Ziwen. On the back of the name card was the address and contact number of the shop. Apart from that, there was a string of numbers that were handwritten at the bottom. It was just underneath the telephone number, so it looked like an additional number to call. Is this name card really from the former principal? Joan felt puzzled, unsure why he would mail this to him. He picked up the delivery notice and tried calling the sender's number, but he only received the notification, "The number you called is not in service." What's going on? Joan couldn't help but frown. He took a look at the sender's address and saw that it was a place in the East District named Zuolu County. There wasn't an exact street or unit number. Article 92 of 1597. Joan studied it for quite some time before figuring out what the name card meant. On it was a string of handwritten numbers that didn't seem like a telephone number. Typical cell phone numbers were 11 digits with landlines being 7. However, this number had 10 digits, so it clearly wasn't right. It didn't seem right either that certain digits of a cell phone number were missing. This was because the string of numbers started with a 5 while cell phone numbers typically started with 1. Most people usually wouldn't write the first digit wrongly. What does this string of numbers represent? Joan had the urge to ask the former principal if it was from him, but he didn't have his contact details. Although he could return to the Yin family to ask Ouyang-lan, he didn't wish to have too much interaction with them, nor did he wish to head to the Yin family home again. Ouyang-lan was nice, but Joan wasn't fond of the Yin siblings, much less wished to have much to do with them. After some thought, he put away the name card. If this item had really been mailed to him by the former principal, it was likely that he would contact him in the future. After packing up, Joan continued gaming. Wang Fei's mood was terrible. Her opinion was that Joan was a genius. For him to slay the Blade demonized general single-handedly, that level of combat skill was enough to shock Sunset College even if one didn't consider his cultivation talent. Wang Fei believed that if he was properly nurtured, his future was limitless. Furthermore, Ouyang-lan had also requested her to take good care of him. No matter how good his talent is, it will all go to waste if he keeps gaming. I have to place him back on the right track. Wang Fei believed that she was obligated and responsible for teaching Joan well. Even without Ouyang-lan, she didn't wish a genius like Joan to let his talent go to waste. How can I get Joan to quit gaming and re-establish his values towards life in the world? Wang Fei frowned in thought. The harm games brought about was a serious societal issue before the dimensional storms. Countless parents and teachers did their best to stop students from being obsessed with gaming, but this problem wasn't solved at its roots. After the dimensional storms, due to the change in society and the collective consciousness, the number of students who gamed had reduced significantly. However, there were still many who were obsessed with gaming. Wang Fei felt that Joan mustn't have fallen too deep. After all, he had been a diligent student in the past. He was only using games to escape reality after suffering a heavy setback. However, from the 2 battles Joan engaged in after coming to Sunset College, his foundation was excellent. He had to be a very diligent and assiduous student. As long as his confidence and values towards life were established again, he could quit his gaming addiction. After some thought, Wang Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. He that hides can find. Since Joan lost his confidence and is escaping from reality after his defeat by Jing, wouldn't defeating Jing allow him to re-establish his confidence? The more Wang Fei thought about it, the more viable she found it to be. To get Joan to defeat a genius like Jing was also a challenge and accomplishment for a teacher. This would only make it more interesting. Wang Fei steeled her resolve to complete this plan of hers. She wished that a student she mentored could defeat Jing, who the Yin family treated like a treasure. Even her body heated up in excitement. Joan didn't know that he had become a gaming addict youth in Wang Fei's eyes. He had even become a target for receiving plenty of help. At this moment, he was still focusing on grinding. Having lost count of the number of times he grinded Tiger Cage Pass, Joan finally encountered a word engraved demonized general. From a distance, Joan was delighted because engraving on the demonized general's helmet was paper. He sent the blood-colored avatar charging at the demonized general, for he was already very familiar with its series of attacks. With the silver-winged flying ant speed, it wasn't difficult for him to deal with it. When the blood-colored avatar dodged the strange spear's first strike, the paper demonized general used its astral suction palm. It widened its left palm and aimed it at the blood-colored avatar. The blood-colored avatar seemed to be bound by a potent, invisible force and was yanked towards the paper demonized general. With a thought from Joan, the blood-colored avatar's left palm exploded, a faint beam that resembled a blade. It instantly sliced through the invisible force beyond his body. The astral suction palm's strength was like a piece of paper that was sliced through by the sharp blade beam. The thin silk-like blade beam then cleaved into the gap between the paper demonized general's helmet and breastplate, beheading it with one strike. Joan was delighted. Although he guessed that astral-slash-blade could counter the paper demonized general's primordial energy skill, he never expected it to be this strong. He had expended 10 points of primordial energy for the astral-slash-blade, and it ended up beheading the paper demonized general. Killed mutated demonized general. Discovered dimensional crystal. However, what left Joan depressed was that the paper demonized general didn't drop a primordial energy skill or companion egg. All it dropped was a strength crystal valued at 18. If Zhou Wen had advanced to the legendary stage, such a strength crystal was naturally the best. He would instantly have his strength stat rise to 18. Unfortunately, he was still at the mortal stage and his strength's limit couldn't be broken. Having such a high-valued strength crystal was useless. Rushing in the direction of Tiger Cage Pass, he was shot to death once again. It was equivalent to him committing suicide, but he had no way of having the dungeon respawn its monsters without him dying. When he entered the game again, Zhou Wen killed the skeleton general, silver-winged flying ant, and mutated Buddha heart lotus once more. As the chances of a drop were too low, Zhou Wen's repeated grinding didn't reward him with anything good. However, with a massive number of grinding instances, anything with a low probability would eventually drop. This time, after killing the mutated Buddha heart lotus, a companion egg dropped. When Zhou Wen saw its stats, his eyes lit up. He nearly kissed the companion egg. Mutated Buddha heart lotus, legendary. Legendary life providence, turbid waters clear lotus. Strength, 18. Speed, 15. Constitution, 17. Primordial energy, 18. Talent skill, blood patterned Buddha aspect, lotus bullets, venom toad, Buddha lotus rage. A mutated Buddha heart lotus with 4 talent skills. Its strength and primordial energy are considered at max level. Even for a flower-type companion beast with weak constitution, it's at 17. This mutated Buddha heart lotus is an excellent one. Zhou Wen drooled as he looked at the mutated Buddha heart lotus companion egg. But in an instant, Zhou Wen felt vexed. He couldn't bear to feed such an excellent grade mutated Buddha heart lotus to Truth Listener and the silver-winged flying ant. However, if he were to incubate it, his lacking primordial energy might create new problems. I can only risk it. Zhou Wen saw that the mutated skeleton ant and mutated Buddha heart lotus's fusion success rate and decided to fuse them together. Article 93 of 1597. The game system gave a compatibility score of 34%. This also meant that the chance of a successful fusion was at about a third. It was quite a low probability. However, the mutated Buddha heart lotus was so excellent that Zhou Wen couldn't bring himself to feed it to Truth Listener. He had no way of taking it out of the game after all. As for the mutated skeleton ant, although it was quite a good mortal companion beast, it was limited by its mortal stage. After having the silver-winged flying ant, there was a decreasing need for it. Even if he didn't fuse it now, it would gradually be eliminated in the future. Therefore, after plenty of thought, he decided to risk it to fuse the 2 companion beasts together. After Zhou Wen chose to proceed with the fusion of the mutated skeleton ant and mutated Buddha heart lotus, the game system immediately gave a notification. As the mutated skeleton ant is an adult, the mutated Buddha heart lotus will be treated as a supplement for fusion. Proceed with fusion? It was identical to the previous time. Zhou Wen was already mentally prepared, so he instantly chose yes. The mutated Buddha heart lotus companion egg and mutated skeleton ant bloomed with light as the former flew to the latter. As the 2 blobs of light merged into one, it caused the entire phone screen to light up. Instantly, nothing could be seen. Zhou Wen waited for quite some time until the phone's screen dimmed. Then, he heard a chime. Fusion successful. Obtained legendary companion beast, mutated lotus flower ant. Only then could Zhou Wen see a companion beast on his screen. It didn't look much different from the mutated skeleton ant from before. It still had a white bone exterior and its body seemed to be bigger. On its head, there was a budding blood-colored lotus flower. After opening the stats of the mutated lotus flower ant, Zhou Wen was overjoyed by what he saw. Mutated lotus flower ant, legendary. Legendary life providence, turbid waters clear lotus. Strength, 19. Speed, 17. Constitution, 18. Primordial energy, 18. Talent skill, skeleton pierce rank 10, blood patterned Buddha aspect rank 9, lotus bullets rank 5, venom toad rank 8, Buddha lotus rage rank 9. Companion form, bracer. The lotus ant had inherited the mutated Buddha heart lotus's life providence turbid waters clear lotus. It was a pretty good and pragmatic one that made it immune to venomous liquids and corrosion. Amongst the 4 stats, only speed was 1 point short of maxing out. As for strength, it was an overdrive at 19, having exceeded the limits of a typical legendary maximum. It was considered the best among the best. Even crazier was that the lotus ant had retained all the mutated skeleton ants and mutated Buddha heart lotus's skills, becoming one with 5 primordial energy skills. Furthermore, it was a terrifying existence with rather high primordial energy skill ranks. If such a legendary companion beast was put on sale, just the fact that it had 5 primordial energy skills was enough for it to be sold at an astronomical price. If there was an overall legendary companion beast ranking, the mutated lotus ant would definitely rank high. In his joy, Zhou Wen summoned the mutated lotus ant and saw a horrifying tank-sized ant appear in front of him. Its body was covered in terrifying bone spikes that made it look ferocious and terrifying. But on its head was a red lotus flower. It was connected to the top of its head with a flower bud. It made its terrifying looks appear rather adorable. As the mutated lotus ant crawled, the lotus flower on its head would bob up and down, making it rather interesting. Just as Zhou Wen was admiring the mutated lotus ant, he suddenly heard the doorbell ring. After dispelling the summon, he opened the door and was astonished to see Wang Fei. Sunset College's education methods were very simple. One counselor led a class and was responsible for giving class homework and missions. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't be directly involved in the education of students. Students could select which teachers' classes they attended based on the mission they had. They could then learn the knowledge and techniques they needed. Therefore, although Wang Fei was Zhou Wen's counselor, there weren't many opportunities for him to meet her. She typically wouldn't request a meeting with her students before the 10-day deadline of the last mission. Unless a student encountered problems and sought her help, a counselor typically didn't interfere with a student's usual studies. Zhou Wen, pack your things. Let's have a walk, Wang Fei said directly before he could even speak. Miss Wang, what do you want me to do? Zhou Wen asked, feeling somewhat unhappily. Wang Fei said with a smile, Professor Chen has a project that requires a student to be his assistant. I think you are very suitable for it, so I recommended you to him. Is that a homework mission? Zhou Wen frowned slightly. He had no intention of being an assistant. He had long heard of the benefits that came from being a professor's assistant, as it allowed one to interact with many high-level objects and broaden one's horizons while also gaining some pointers from a professor. It was an opportunity many students wanted. However, Zhou Wen didn't like having such an opportunity. Although it was beneficial, it required him to sacrifice his time to work for the professor. To other students, such work was a way of honing themselves, a type of improvement. But to Zhou Wen, it was a waste of time that would eat into his gaming time. It's not a homework mission. I just find you very suited for it, so I recommended you. Professor Chen has great achievements when it comes to nurturing companion beasts. In Sunset College, he's an authority in such matters. Furthermore, he has done a great amount of research on melee fighting primordial energy skills. I believe it will be very beneficial to you if you were to learn from him. Wang Fei was feeling rather pleased with herself. Professor Chen was a famous old fogey. Getting anyone to convince him to take in another student as an assistant was practically impossible. In Sunset College, not more than 3 people could get Professor Chen to agree to such a request. Zhou Wen wasn't able to see Wang Fei's face as he said directly, Miss Wang, if it's not a homework mission, I hope to decline the offer. Wang Fei's smile instantly froze. Imagining that Zhou Wen wasn't aware of what was happening, she explained, Professor Chen Qizhan isn't just an authoritative figure in Sunset College but in the entire league. By being his assistant, you can come into contact with several high-level companion beasts and learn of their characteristics and powers. This will be of tremendous help to your future exploring of dimensional zones. Furthermore, Professor Chen is. Before Wang Fei could finish, Zhou Wen said firmly, Miss Wang, thank you for your kind intentions. I still wish to decline. My usual homework missions give me enough stress. I need time for studying and revision. I really do not have enough time, so if it isn't a homework mission, I wish to decline. Wang Fei felt as if she had been doused in cold water. All her excitement and glee instantly turned to nothing. It left her mood extremely nasty. Are you sure you are declining? Wang Fei asked Zhou Wen with a glare. Yes, Miss Wang. Zhou Wen clearly wasn't good at reading people as he nodded. All right. Wang Fei turned and left, her teeth grinding angrily. As Zhou Wen's counselor, one who had paid special attention to him, Wang Fei knew that he hadn't attended any teacher classes for the past few days, so what did he mean by studying and revision? Apart from slaying the Blade demonized general, he likely spent most of his days in his dorm gaming. Article 94 of 1597. Wang Fei clearly didn't plan on giving up just like that. Regardless of her being a counselor or Ouyang Lan's good friend, she believed that she had the obligation to rescue Zhou Wen, who was a gaming addict who had excellent talent. Since you have no intention of improving yourself, I'll make you realize the importance with the help of external forces. Wang Fei's eyes darted about as she came up with an idea. However, her idea couldn't be carried out immediately. She needed to wait for the demonized general slaying mission to end before she could use a new homework mission and force Zhou Wen to face the difficulty. In the next homework mission, it appears I need to get that little fellow to make a trip to Jingxi Mountain. Wang Fei's eyes flickered with excitement. Jingxi Mountain was also known as Mount Laojun. It was the main peak in the Funia mountain range that spanned 400 kilometers. Legend had it that this was the place the founder of Taoism, Li Er, had hidden himself. Although the legend's veracity couldn't be confirmed, Mount Laojun also became a dimensional storm zone after the dimensional storms. Furthermore, it became rather strange. The other dimensional zones were fraught with danger, with dimensional creatures extremely ferocious. However, Mount Laojun's dimensional creatures wouldn't attack humans without reason. They almost never injured anyone. Mount Laojun's Golden Peak had many Taoist temples, but to date, no one had been able to conquer the Golden Peak. Beneath the Golden Peak was a wordless monument. Although there were no words engraved on it, whoever viewed it would feel inspired and refreshed. They wouldn't be frustrated by trivialities of the human world. Therefore, the wordless monument was named Unwinding Monument. However, looking at Unwinding Monument for a while was good, but if one looked at it for too long, one's mind would be so stimulated that not only couldn't they sleep, they would even be in a hyperactive state, as though they had infinite energy and were eager to do something. Some people who looked at Unwinding Monument for too long would begin boxing with all their might for 3 full days. Others would begin running until they were exhausted and unable to crawl. In short, as long as one looked at the Unwinding Monument, they would become extremely inspired and diligent no matter how lazy they were. The amount of time one looked at Unwinding Monument had to be controlled. If one were to stare at it for too long, they might die from overstimulation. It was something that had happened before. Although Mount Laojun was in Luong, it wasn't inside Sunset College. Therefore, Wang Fei planned on leading the class to Mount Laojun after the demonized general homework mission was over. Zhou Wen continued grinding in his form, but he wasn't just mindlessly grinding. He had planned on rushing into Ant City, Fire God Platform, and Tiger Cage Pass to see if there were any places similar to Small Buddha Temple. Unfortunately, he met with repeated failures. Zhou Wen had a suspicion that the reason the Lost Immortal Sutra couldn't advance him to legendary had to do with his mastery of the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in Small Buddha Temple. Due to the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, Zhou Wen's stat had broken through to 11 points while the other stats remained at 10. Therefore, Zhou Wen believed that the Lost Immortal Sutra allowed him to master other primordial energy arts, and they also could perhaps raise his other stats to 11. He didn't know if the Lost Immortal Sutra had such a feature, nor did he know if he could advance to the legendary stage when all his stats reached 11. However, it brought him some hope, far better than not having any clue at all. It was a pity that Zhou Wen didn't find any places similar to Small Buddha Temple. There was a monument above the Fire God platform, but there were firebirds protecting it, preventing him from rushing up and seeing what the monument with the word Imperial engraved on it was. Truth Listener is said to be a mythical companion beast, so all its beginning stats are at 11. Perhaps the value 11 has some specialness. Zhou Wen thought about rushing to the Fire God platform again, but before he could rush to its peak, he died under the ever-increasing horde of firebirds. From the looks of it, I need to obtain a primordial energy art that imbues alacrity. It's impossible to reach the top of Fire God platform by simply relying on the silver-winged flying ant. Zhou Wen switched off the phone and began researching on the school's website. Currently, his phone had Ant Nest, Ancient Imperial City, Underground Buddha City, and Tiger Cage Pass. None of these dungeons produced primordial energy skills that imbued alacrity. Therefore, Zhou Wen had to find new dungeons. The school's data was very comprehensive. When he searched for primordial energy skills that imbued alacrity, he quickly found an answer. Sunset College had many dimensional zones that produced such skills. And the most famous one was at Dragon Gate Grotto. There were two from Dragon Gate Grotto. One of them was the Mount Dragon Gate's Fish Dragon transformation, while the other was the Dragon Gate Grotto's Dragon Gate Fairy skill. Mount Dragon Gate's Fish Dragon transformation stemmed from the legend of carps jumping through a dragon gate to transform into a dragon. It was a primordial energy skill that allowed one to soar straight up to a height of hundreds of feet as though one was flying in the sky. However, a single leap of Fish Dragon transformation was enough to drain all of one's primordial energy. Such massive expenditure wasn't one that Zhou Wen needed. Furthermore, Mount Dragon Gate wasn't in Sunset College. Dragon Gate Fairy skill was the complete opposite of Fish Dragon transformation. It was a long-lasting primordial energy skill that imbued alacrity. It used one's changes in motion to fly and dance in the sky like a fairy. Although it needed a point to leverage upon, making it not true flight, it was good enough. However, obtaining the Dragon Gate Fairy skill wasn't simple. This was only produced by the Lotus Flower Cave in Dragon Gate Grotto. Furthermore, the drop rate was very low. People could spend more than a year inside without having it drop. Firstly, Dragon Gate Fairy skill's drop rate was very low, and secondly, there were very few dimensional creatures in Lotus Flower Cave. Zhou Wen naturally didn't have any qualms about that. All he needed to do was head to Dragon Gate Grotto and download the dungeon before being able to grind it infinitely. He didn't need to worry about not having dimensional creatures to clear. Of course, that was on the premise that he had enough blood to support such an action. Thinking of how great his recent blood loss was, he drank a mouthful of his self-brewed blood replenishing tea. Although it didn't seem to be of any use, it gave him a placebo effect. He was about to head to Dragon Gate Grotto and see if he could download it, but to his surprise, just as he left his building, he saw the young white-gloved military officer standing at his yard's entrance, instructing two soldiers to carry a crate in. Zhou Wen recognized the young military officer. He was in Tianzuo's adjutant and driver who he had met before. Zhou Wen didn't know why he was here. Just as he was about to ask, the adjutant said, "Young Master Wen, Madam has requested me to bring this crate to you. Please acknowledge receipt." Zhou Wen frowned slightly and walked over to the crate and opened it up a little. Immediately, he saw all kinds of dazzling dimensional crystals inside. Article 95 of 1597. What's the meaning of this? Zhou Wen asked with a frown. Young Master Wen, this is your allowance for this month. If it's not enough, you can always request more from Madam. She had actually planned on preparing a few companion beasts that would be suitable for you, but after recognizing the fact that you would be advancing to the legendary stage soon, they weren't made. There will be more choices and useful ones when the time comes, the adjutant said. Sis Lan really gave this to me? Zhou Wen asked the adjutant. Yes, the adjutant answered with great certainty. Then help me thank Sis Lan. I appreciate the gesture, but I don't need it, Zhou Wen said as he lowered the lid. The adjutant looked at Zhou Wen in surprise. Young Master Wen, this is your allowance just like Miss Jing. It's what you deserve. That's what Jing deserves, not me. I have no need for it either. Please return and tell Sis Lan. I respect her, but my surname isn't in, Zhou Wen said. The adjutant looked at Zhou Wen but stopped trying to persuade him. He just took out a pen and paper to write down a cell phone number and handed it to him with both hands. Young Master Wen, I'll take the items back. This is my number where I'm contactable any time of the day. If you have any requests, feel free to give me a call. All right. Thank you. Zhou Wen took the paper slip and saw the number. There were the words Ah Sheng written behind the number, perhaps the name of the adjutant. However, the name looked more like a nickname or pet name. It didn't seem like a real name. As though he noticed Zhou Wen's doubts, Ah Sheng said, I was picked up by Overseer and in a dimensional zone. I had suffered serious injuries to my head and lost all my memories. Overseer in hopes that I can be reborn from the flames, which is why he gave me the name Sheng representing life. I also took on his surname as in. Young Master Wen, you can just call me Ah Sheng. Alright, thank you Ah Sheng. Please help me take the things back. Zhou Wen put away the paper slip and after sending Adjutant Ah Sheng off, he headed straight for Dragon Gate Grotto. Ah Sheng returned to the Yin family with the items, however, he didn't take them to Ouyang Land but to Tianzuo. Why did you bring the items back? Tianzuo looked at the crate with a frown. Young Master Wen wanted me to bring them back, Ah Sheng said. Did you tell him that they were from my mom? Tianzuo asked. Yes, Young Master Wen said to thank her. He appreciates her gesture but he doesn't want the items, Ah Sheng replied truthfully. Then put them away, Tianzuo said after some thought. Overseer, I think Young Master Wen must have guessed that these things weren't from Madam, Ah Sheng added. Why so? Tianzuo asked with piqued interest. Just a feeling without any basis. You aren't a woman, so what feeling is there to speak of? Tianzuo paused and said, this Zhou Wen has quite a backbone. However, one cannot be successful with backbone alone. If he wishes to cultivate the Sun Strafe art, it's a mystery how long it will take for him to advance to the legendary stage without enough primordial energy crystals. We can't have little Jing waiting for him all the time, right? Overseer, I have something I'm not sure if I should say, Ah Sheng said with some hesitation. Cut it out. When have you held back? Tianzuo said with a grunt. Ah Sheng said, Miss Jing's body isn't good, so Madam preventing her vying for the special physique is for her own good, but why must she compete with Young Master Wen for supremacy? Tianzuo said lightly, I know little Jing's personality all too well. She doesn't care about the nomination but she wants to prove to Mom that Zhou Wen isn't as excellent as grandfather claims him to be and definitely not better than she is. Zhou Wen followed the navigation and headed for Dragon Gate Grotto. As Dragon Gate Grotto was just too huge, Sunset College actually covered a tiny area of it. Most of it was outside the campus. After Zhou Wen arrived, he realized a serious problem. Places like Ancient Imperial City, Underground Buddha City, and Tiger Cage Pass had a small palm symbol that allowed him to see it at a glance, thereby successfully scanning it and downloading the dungeon. However, Dragon Gate Grotto was a kilometer-long stretch. There were countless stone monuments and stone sculptures here, but there was nothing that resembled an entrance like a city gate. There was no obvious spot to find the small palm symbol. There were many caves that could be entered in Dragon Gate Grotto. The dimensional zones inside formed an infinitely extensive area. For instance, the Lotus Flower Cave which Zhou Wen wanted to go to was just one of many. Without the palm symbol, Zhou Wen could only follow the river, carefully taking in everything around him, the Buddha statues and stone sculptures. He hoped to find the palm symbol and download the dungeon into his mysterious phone. The Dragon Gate Grotto had about 100,000 Buddha statues. The tallest one reached nearly 20 meters and there were more than 50 caves. The masonry numbered thousands. After the dimensional storms, every cave had a huge number of dimensional creatures appearing in their interior. Zhou Wen looked around as he walked, making extremely slow progress. However, he didn't find the palm symbol. Zhou Wen. As he was searching for the symbol along the river, he suddenly heard someone call his name. Zhou Wen turned and realized that the person who called out to him was the girl, Wang Lu, who lived next door to him. Zhou Wen, have you come to Dragon Gate Grotto for cultivation as well? Wang Lu asked with a smile. I'm just here to take a look. I don't plan on entering, Zhou Wen said. Since you're here, it's a shame if you don't go in. I heard there have recently been dragon roars inside Old Dragon Cave. There's also a treasure-like glow that appears at night. It's very strange. Why don't you go in with me to take a look? Wang Lu invited. The stranger it is, the more dangerous it is. It's better I do not enter, Zhou Wen said as he continued walking ahead. Wang Lu stuck her tongue out and headed for Old Dragon Cave. Dragon Gate Grotto was just too huge and there were too many carvings. To find a small palm symbol clearly wasn't an easy task. Zhou Wen was very patient but despite scouring every inch, he ultimately failed to find the tiny symbol. Could it be that not all dimensional zones can be downloaded? Zhou Wen began having doubts but he continued searching. Outside Dragon Gate Grotto was a rather popular place as many Sunset College students came here for cultivation and to kill dimensional creatures. There were some people from Luong who weren't students who entered via the north entrance. He also saw many people setting up shop by the caves, some selling the dimensional crystals and companion eggs that came from the respective cave. Upon seeing those stalls selling companion eggs, Zhou Wen suddenly had a thought. The mysterious phone can download a companion egg into the game via taking a picture. Then, can I take the companion eggs of others in-game by snapping a photo? The phone shouldn't be smart enough to tell who the companion egg belongs to, right? Article 96 of 1597.